Have you ever noticed how your own confidence when you are learning something new and these massive technology trends somehow follow the exact same predictable roller coaster ride? It sounds a little weird, I know, but we're about to dive into this really fascinating connection between how we learn and how all of us adopt new tech. So let's follow the clues and see where this thing takes us.
You know this feeling, right? You start learning a new skill, maybe it's coding, maybe it's a language, and at first you feel like a genius, unstoppable. But then, a little while later, that confidence just evaporates, and you're left feeling like you know absolutely nothing at all. So what is going on here?
Well, it turns out this whole emotional up and down thing isn't random. Not at all. It actually follows a hidden, universal pattern. It's a pattern that shapes everything from our personal confidence to our collective hopes for the future. And trust me, once you see this pattern, you are going to start noticing it everywhere.
Okay, so to solve this puzzle, we really need to look at two key clues. And at first, they're going to seem totally unrelated. One comes from the world of psychology, and the other from the high-stakes world of technology. So our first clue, it's all about our own personal journey with knowledge. It's a model that perfectly captures those incredible highs and crushing lows of confidence that we feel whenever we're trying to master something new.
And here it is, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, this is a cognitive bias that was first identified by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger. What's so wild about it is that this has nothing to do with how smart you are. It's about something called metacognition, basically our ability to know what we don't know. When we know just a tiny bit, we're not even equipped to see how huge our own knowledge gaps really are. So the journey starts at a peak, and it's got a great name. It's called Mount Stupid, where just a little bit of knowledge fuels this massive overconfidence. Then, as you learn more, you just plummet into the valley of despair. This is where you realize just how much you have yet to learn. But if you can push through that, you start this steady climb up the slope of enlightenment, where your confidence and your actual skills start to match up, and you eventually reach a nice, stable plateau of sustainability. Think about learning to code for a second. After you write your first little Hello World program, you might feel like, okay, I can build the next Facebook. That's you standing on top of Mount Stupid. But then you hit your first really confusing bug, and suddenly you're deep in the valley of despair, just staring into this abyss of complexity. This pattern happens with everything. All right, let's pivot to our second clue. We're going to shift from our own individual psychology to the collective expectations we all have for new tech, because it turns out, as a society, we do the exact same thing, just on a massive scale. And this is what's called Gartner's hype cycle. It's a tool used by the research firm Gartner, and it maps out how new technologies evolve in the public eye. What it shows is that our excitement about tech is never a straight line up. Nope, it's a wild ride that's pushed and pulled by the media, by investors, and by our own collective psychology. Now, does this look a little familiar? The hype cycle kicks off with an innovation trigger. That leads right up to a peak of inflated expectations, where the hype is just off the charts. Then comes the inevitable crash into the trough of disillusionment, when the tech fails to deliver on all those crazy promises. But from there, a more realistic understanding starts to build on the slope of enlightenment, finally landing us on the plateau of productivity. Blockchain is the perfect real-world example. After Bitcoin came along, the hype just exploded during that ICO boom back in 2017. Remember? It was going to solve everything. That was the peak. Then the market crashed and everyone got disillusioned. But now we're seeing this slow, steady climb as the focus shifts to more sober, practical uses, like decentralized finance. Okay, so now we have our two clues, a map for individual confidence and a map for technology hype. And when you put them side by side, well, the connection is just undeniable. This is the big reveal. Just look at the language here. It's incredible. Mount Stupid is basically the same idea as the peak of inflated expectations. The valley of despair perfectly mirrors the trough of disillusionment. And get this, both models, developed completely independently, use the exact same term, slope of enlightenment, to describe the recovery. It's the same psychological journey, just playing out on two different stages, one inside our heads and one across the entire world. So what's the deep connection? What's really going on? Well, both of these curves are simply tracking the gap between our perception and reality. That's it. It's a fundamentally human thing. We are wired to make these huge, bold projections based on very limited information. For Dunning-Kruger, it's how good we think we are versus how good we actually are. For the hype cycle, it's the market's perceived potential versus a technology's actual readiness. In both cases, perception just races ahead of reality, which leads to an inevitable crash before a more realistic, productive alignment can happen. There's that famous quote, often credited to Einstein, that just nails this whole journey. That humbling moment when you realize the world is so much more complex than you first thought, that's not a sign you're failing. It's actually a sign of progress. It's the gateway to real, true understanding. Okay, so we see the pattern now. It's clear. But so what? What do we do with this knowledge? How can we actually use these maps to navigate our own lives and our work a little bit better? So, for your own learning journey, the key is just to anticipate this ride. When you feel your confidence just crater in that valley of despair, don't give up. That's the exact moment to dig in, to do deliberate practice, and to find a mentor who can give you feedback. Just remember, feeling like you don't know anything is often the clearest sign that you're on the right track to genuine expertise. And for businesses or organizations dealing with tech, this pattern is basically a strategic map. Don't get swept up in the mania at the peak of inflated expectations. Instead, really understand where a technology is on the curve. And here's a pro tip. When everyone else is running for the hills during the trough of disillusionment, that might just be the absolute best time to look for real value and smart investment opportunities. Ultimately, these two curves, they reveal a fundamental truth about how we make progress. We're all driven by this cycle of hope and humility. We need that initial, maybe even naive optimism to even start these difficult journeys. But we also need that humbling dose of reality to achieve true, sustainable mastery. So the real question to leave you with is this. Now that you see the pattern, how will you use it?